"She's a danger to those children," my mother-in-law Eleanor hissed, her voice cutting through the courthouse hallway like a knife. She stood tall in her designer suit, pointing a manicured finger at me while addressing the social worker. "She's unstable, unfit, and those children deserve better than what she's given them." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked her directly in the eyes, smiled calmly, and said, "Thank you for making this so easy." Then I turned and walked away, the manila envelope clutched tightly in my hand. That moment, outwardly composed but inwardly seething, was the beginning of everything. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday afternoon. Just me and my 2 children, Olivia and Max, at the community pool, something we tried to do every weekend before the school week began. The water sparkled under the summer sun, kids laughing and splashing while parents lounged under striped umbrellas. It felt like a precious slice of normalcy after what had been the most devastating year of our lives. It had been 11 months since Nathan, my husband, and the father of my children died in Afghanistan. He was 36, a career military man on his 4th deployment. The official notice came on a Tuesday morning. 3 uniformed officers at my door, solemn faces, practiced words that shattered our world. The kind of moment that divides your life into before and after. But death, as crushing as it was, wasn't the only blow fate had in store for us. Just 2 months after the funeral, while going through Nathan's personal effects shipped back from overseas, Olivia found something tucked inside her father's journal. Something that changed everything we thought we knew about him. Letters. Dozens of them, all from the same woman. Not just any woman, but Eleanor's personal assistant, Vanessa. The affair had been going on for years, right under all our noses, during his leaves and even in our home. My children were the ones who discovered their father's betrayal. Olivia, 16 and sharp as a tack, connected the dates on the letters to times her father was supposedly visiting his mother. Max, only 12, stood silently as his sister laid out the evidence across our dining room table, his small face crumbling, as he realized what it all meant. They carried that pain, the double loss of not just their father, but the image of the man they had idolized. When Eleanor, my formidable mother-in-law, started demanding more time with the kids after Nathan's death, insisting they needed proper guidance and suggesting I wasn't coping well enough to raise them, my children became increasingly withdrawn around her. They declined weekend visits to her sprawling estate across town. They stopped answering her calls. They needed space, therapy, healing, not lectures from the woman who had enabled their father's deception. Apparently, boundaries weren't something Eleanor Blackwood respected. That Sunday at the pool was Max's birthday celebration, a small gathering with a few of his school friends. I had stepped away to get more sunscreen from the car when I heard Olivia's voice, strained and angry. "Mom! She's here, and she won't leave." By the time I rounded the corner, Eleanor had cornered Max by the concession stand. 2 of her country club friends flanked her like sentries, all of them dressed impeccably despite the casual pool setting. Eleanor's hand gripped Max's thin shoulder as she bent down, her pearl earrings swinging as she spoke rapidly into his ear. The boy's face was pale, his swim trunks dripping onto the concrete as he stood frozen. Olivia had already stepped between them, her teenage frame somehow imposing despite Eleanor's advantage in height and age. "He asked you to stop," she was saying firmly, pushing her wet hair from her face. "This is his birthday. Please just go." Eleanor's head snapped up at my approach, her expression shifting from intense to saccharine in an instant. "There you are, Audrey. I was just telling Max how much we miss him at Sunday dinners. These children need family traditions, structure, especially now." I positioned myself between her and my children, my voice low and steady. "You weren't invited, Eleanor. We discussed this. The kids need space." One of her friends, I recognized, her as the wife of a local judge, cleared her throat disapprovingly. "Family doesn't need invitations, dear. These children have lost their father. They need their grandmother's influence now more than ever. Eleanor's other friend nodded. Honestly, Audrey, keeping them away from family is simply unconscionable. Nathan would be devastated to see how you've turned them against his mother. I felt Max's hand slip into mine, trembling slightly. Olivia stood rigid beside us, her jaw set in a way that reminded me painfully of her father. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she took in our united front. "This isn't over," she said softly, her smile never wavering. "These children deserve better than a mother who poisons them against their own blood." The pool manager approached then, drawn by the tension. "Is everything all right here?" I managed a tight smile. "Yes, these ladies were just leaving. We were escorted back to our pool area shortly after that, Eleanor and her friends trailing behind us like wolves watching their prey, murmuring to each other behind manicured hands. The pool manager, a kind-faced woman who had known my kids since they were toddlers, positioned herself strategically between our groups until Eleanor finally retreated to the parking lot. Max's birthday celebration continued, but the joy had drained from it. His friends tried to pull him back into their water games, but his eyes kept darting to the entrance, as if expecting his grandmother to return at any moment. Olivia sat with me under the umbrella, her shoulders tense, picking at the icing on a slice of cake she didn't eat. "Why won't she leave us alone?" she whispered, her voice catching. "Doesn't she understand that we know? That we found the letters?" I squeezed her hand. "She thinks she can control the narrative. She always has." The truth was, Eleanor Blackwood had been controlling narratives her entire life. As the widow of a decorated general and a prominent figure in our military community, she wielded influence like a scalpel, precise, calculated, and often without leaving visible wounds. For years I had watched her orchestrate social situations, charity events, and family gatherings with the tactical precision her husband had once applied to battlefield strategies. When Nathan died, that control extended to how his memory would be preserved. The funeral she planned was less about grief and more about legacy, a carefully curated display of military honors, community leaders, and family solidarity. She had even scripted the eulogy, removing any mentions of Nathan's more human qualities, his struggles, his rare but cherished silly moments with the kids. In Eleanor's version, her son was a flawless hero, a paragon of duty and honor. Finding out about his affair didn't fit that narrative. That night, after tucking an exhausted Max into bed and checking on Olivia, who had retreated to her room with headphones firmly in place, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine I barely touched. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the dishwasher and the occasional creak of the old farmhouse floors. Nathan and I had bought this place when he made Captain, a fixer-upper that we'd slowly renovated between deployments. Eleanor had hated it from the start. Too rustic, too far from her social circle, not befitting an officer of Nathan's standing. My phone buzzed with a notification. A friend from the military spouses support group had tagged me in a post on the private community page. My stomach dropped as I opened it. There it was, a lengthy post from Eleanor, framed as a concerned update about her grandchildren. She described how they were struggling since Nathan's death, how I was overwhelmed and emotionally unstable, unable to provide the structure they desperately needed. She detailed missing school events. I had been at every single one. Neglected, medical checkups, all completed and documented, and alarming behavioral changes, normal grief responses that our therapist had assured me were healthy processing. The most devastating claim came at the end. Eleanor suggested that I had turned to alcohol to cope with my grief, implying I was drinking heavily around the children. A complete fabrication, but one that would raise serious concerns in our conservative military community. The post concluded with a request for prayers and any resources that might help these precious children receive the care they deserve. Comments flooded in below, expressions of concern, offers of help, and worst of all, people corroborating her story with vague anecdotes. I noticed Audrey seemed unsteady at the Memorial Day ceremony, wrote one woman I'd spoken to for perhaps 5 minutes in my life. The children looked so withdrawn at church last Sunday, added another, though we hadn't attended that particular service in weeks. The narrative was being written without me, shaped by Eleanor's careful hands, and amplified by a community that respected her position too much to question her claims. I took a screenshot of the post, then another and another, capturing every comment, every name. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a cold, clarifying anger. This wasn't just meddling or overstepping. This was methodical character assassination. This was preparation for something bigger. The next morning confirmed my suspicions. I was making lunches for the kids when my phone rang. Nathan's former commanding officer, Colonel James Rivera. "Audrey," he said, his voice grave. "I wanted to give you a heads up before you're blindsided. Eleanor came to see me yesterday. She's filing for emergency custody of the children. She asked me to provide a statement about your mental state since Nathan's passing." I gripped the counter, my knuckles white. "And will you?" He paused. "No, but others might. You need to prepare yourself, Audrey. She's determined, and she has connections." After hanging up, I stood frozen in my kitchen, the half-made sandwiches forgotten. Through the window, I could see Olivia in the backyard, helping Max practice for his soccer tryouts. Her patience with her younger brother, one of the 1,000. Small ways she'd stepped up since we lost Nathan. Eleanor wasn't just trying to increase her visitation or influence. She was trying to take my children. My children, who had already lost so much. Something shifted inside me at that moment, like tectonic plates realigning after an earthquake. This wasn't just about defending myself anymore. This was war. I didn't go to work that day. I called in, using one of my many accumulated personal days, benefits of being the most reliable accountant at a firm that valued precision above all else. I brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint and sat at my dining room table, laptop open, surrounded by folders I'd started keeping the moment Nathan died. Not out of suspicion or paranoia, but from the hard-learned lesson that grief made bureaucracy even more bewildering. Every military spouse knows this. Document everything. Death certificates need multiple copies. Benefits require specific forms. Insurance companies demand particular phraseology. The military itself has protocols for everything, including how a widow should conduct herself. I had been methodical throughout it all, even as my heart splintered daily. But now those organizational skills would serve a different purpose. I began with the facts. Eleanor Blackwood, 68, widow of General Richard Blackwood, resided in Meadowbrook Estates, the most exclusive neighborhood in our town. She sat on the boards of 3 charities, attended St. Thomas Episcopal Church every Sunday without fail, and hosted the annual Veterans Benefit Gala that drew politicians from 3 states. Her social standing was impeccable, her connections extensive. She was also harboring secrets that would shatter that carefully constructed image. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Was I really considering this? Using private family matters as weapons? The thought made my stomach turn. But then I remembered Max's face at the pool, the terror in his eyes as his grandmother cornered him on his birthday. I remembered Olivia's sleepless nights, her muffled crying that she thought I couldn't hear through our thin walls. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in months. James Ellis, Nathan's childhood friend, and now a private investigator in the next county. He had offered help after the funeral, but I'd been too numb to accept. I pressed call. "Audrey?" he answered on the second ring. "It's good to hear from you." "I need your help, James. It's about Eleanor." He didn't sound surprised. "I figured this day might come. What's happened?" I explained the situation, the escalating interference, the custody threat, the social media campaign. James listened without interrupting, and I could hear him taking notes in the background. "Here's what you may not know," he said finally. "Eleanor has been meeting with family court attorneys for weeks. This isn't a sudden decision." My hand tightened around the phone. "How do you know that?" "Because I keep tabs on the Blackwoods. Always have, since what they did to Nathan in high school." This caught me off guard. "What do you mean, what they did to Nathan?" James went quiet for a moment. "He never told you? About the summer before college?" "He said he worked construction, saving for school." A heavy sigh came through the line. "That's the official story. The reality is that Nathan got his high school girlfriend pregnant. His parents, mostly Eleanor, shipped him off to a work camp disguised as a summer job. Paid the girl to have an abortion and move away. Nathan was devastated, but by the time he came back, it was done. Eleanor convinced him it was for the best, that his future in the military would be compromised by a teenage mistake." I sat back, stunned. Nathan had never mentioned any of this, not during our 8 years of marriage, not during late-night confessions, not even during our worst fights. "There's more," James continued. "The Blackwoods have a history of covering things up. Richard's drinking, Eleanor's brother's embezzlement scandal that mysteriously disappeared, Vanessa's sudden transfer to their Dallas office 3 years ago." "Vanessa," I repeated. "Nathan's—" "Yes. Eleanor knows about the affair. Has known for years. She helped facilitate it, actually. Kept Vanessa on the payroll as her assistant, but essentially made her available to Nathan whenever he was home on leave. There are financial records, Audrey, hotel receipts, gifts, all paid through Eleanor's personal foundation." The room seemed to spin around me. Why? Why would she do that? Because Nathan wanted to leave the military after his second tour. He told his parents he was considering a teaching position, spending more time with you and the kids. Eleanor couldn't handle it, the loss of status, the change in plans, so she gave him incentives to stay. Vanessa was one of them. I felt sick. "You're telling me she basically provided her son with a mistress to keep him in uniform?" The Blackwoods have always believed the end justifies the means. Nathan's military career was everything to them. Their standing in the community, their identity. They weren't going to let anything threaten that. Not you, not the kids, not even Nathan's own wishes. I stared out the window at the oak tree Nathan and I had planted when Olivia was born. "Can you prove any of this?" "I've been gathering evidence for years," James said quietly. "I promised Nathan once that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure the truth came out if it needed to. I just never thought it would come to this." "Send me everything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And James, thank you for being a better friend to him than he knew." After hanging up, I sat motionless, processing what I'd learned. The perfect mother-in-law, the grieving military matriarch, had engineered her son's infidelity to maintain her social standing. Had known about his double life and not only permitted it, but facilitated it. Had watched me struggle as a military, wife and mother, knowing all along what was happening behind my back, and now she wanted my children. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it simply Truth. The email from James arrived within the hour. A secure link to a cloud folder containing hundreds of files meticulously organized by date. I clicked through them with increasing disbelief. Financial statements showing regular payments from Eleanor's charitable foundation to a shell company that then paid Vanessa. Hotel reservations made on Eleanor's personal credit card for locations where Nathan was supposedly on training exercises. Emails between mother and son discussing arrangements and discretion. Most damning of all were the recorded phone conversations. Legal, in our state with one-party consent, James had noted, between Eleanor and various community figures. In one, she spoke candidly with the headmaster of the children's private school about how she had managed Nathan's indiscretions to protect the family name. In another, she coolly discussed with her attorney how to ensure Vanessa remained compensated but contained after Nathan's deployment. There was even a recorded call between Eleanor and Nathan from 6 months before his death. His voice, which I hadn't heard since the funeral, made my chest constrict painfully. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," he said, sounding exhausted. "Audrey deserves better. The kids deserve better." "Don't be dramatic, Nathan," Eleanor replied crisply. "You have arrangements many men would envy. A respectable wife for your public life, an understanding companion for your other needs, and children to carry on the Blackwood name. What more could you want? A life that isn't built on lies. The chance to actually be there for my family without all this manipulation? We've invested too much in your career to throw it away on sentimentality. Besides, what would Audrey do if she knew the truth? Take the children and leave? Destroy everything we've built? Is that what you want?" The recording ended there. I sat back, tears streaming down my face, not for the betrayal, which I had already processed in therapy over many difficult sessions, but for the glimpse of a man who might have been trying to find his way back to us, trapped in a web his mother had been spinning his entire life. The final file in the folder was a simple text, document labeled Custody Strategy. James had outlined everything: Eleanor's likely allegations against me, the witnesses she would call, the narrative she would construct of a grieving widow unable to care for her children properly. He also included his assessment of her vulnerabilities, the affair cover-up, the misappropriation of charitable funds, the manipulation of Nathan's career. A note at the bottom read, "Audrey, you don't have to use any of this. There are other ways to fight. But if she forces your hand, know that you're not as outgunned as she wants you to believe." I printed everything, organized it into 3 separate binders, and locked them in my home office. Then I called my own attorney, not the military family services lawyer who had helped with Nathan's death benefits, but Karen Reynolds, a family law specialist known for handling high-profile custody cases. Her hourly rate would decimate my savings, but some things were worth every penny. "Eleanor Blackwood," Karen mused when I explained the situation during our consultation the next morning. Her office was minimalist, no family photos or personal touches, just degrees on the wall and a view of the county courthouse across the street. "I've crossed paths with her at charity functions, formidable woman." "She's trying to take my children," I said simply. Karen's expression sharpened. "Has she filed officially?" "Not yet, but I have reliable information that she's preparing to. She's building a case that I'm unstable, possibly alcoholic and neglectful." "And are you any of those things?" "No, I'm a grieving widow raising 2 grieving children as best I can. I work full-time, attend every school event, and have them both in therapy. We're healing, slowly." Karen nodded, making notes. "Eleanor's reputation in this community is sterling. Judges listen when people like her speak. We need to be prepared for an uphill battle." I slid a flash drive across her desk. "I have evidence that might level the playing field." She raised an eyebrow but connected the drive to her computer without comment. As she scrolled through the files, her expression remained professional, but I caught the slight widening of her eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. "This changes things," she said finally. "But using this information means nuclear war, Audrey. No going back. No reconciliation. Are you prepared for what that means for your children's relationship with their grandmother?" I thought of Olivia's face when she first discovered the letters, of Max's nightmares after his father died, of Eleanor's hand gripping my son's shoulder at the pool. My children already know who their grandmother is. They're the ones who found the evidence of their father's affair. They've already asked for distance from her. I'm just making sure she respects that choice. Karen closed her laptop. "All right, Here's what we're going to do. First, we document everything, every interaction, every social media post, every comment from a third party. Second, we gather character witnesses who can testify to your capabilities as a mother. Third, we prepare a response to any emergency, filing that includes just enough of this evidence to make Eleanor reconsider whether she wants to pursue this in open court. And if she doesn't back down? Karen's smile was slight, but unmistakable. Then we show her exactly what she has to lose. I left the office with a detailed action plan and the first glimmer of hope I'd felt since seeing Eleanor at the pool. This wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about reclaiming our narrative from a woman who had been controlling it for far too long. That evening, as I helped Max with his math homework and listened to Olivia practice her presentation for history class, I felt a strange sense of calm. The storm was coming, but for once, I wasn't unprepared. The official custody filing arrived 3 days later, delivered by a process server who looked uncomfortable as he handed me the thick envelope. On our front porch, Olivia watched from the living room window, her face pale but composed. I thanked the man politely and closed the door before opening the document. Eleanor hadn't waited. The papers detailed a request for emergency temporary custody, citing immediate concern for the children's well-being and unstable home environment. She claimed I had exhibited erratic behavior since Nathan's death, including excessive alcohol consumption, emotional outbursts, and parental alienation tactics. The filing requested an expedited hearing, scheduled for just 2 weeks away. Called Karen immediately, reading portions of the document to her over the phone. She's moving faster than we anticipated, Karen said, the sound of shuffling papers in the background. But this works in our favor. Emergency filings require substantial evidence of imminent harm. From what you've shared, she doesn't have that, has dozens of community members willing to support her version of events, I countered, thinking of the social media comments. Hearsay and gossip won't sway a family court judge, especially against documented evidence of proper care. Do you have the children's therapy records, school attendance, medical checkups? Everything. I keep digital and physical copies. Good. Bring it all to my office tomorrow. And Audrey, you need to tell the children. They should hear about this. From you, not from Eleanor or someone else. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, gathering my strength for the conversation ahead. Max was at soccer practice. His coach, a fellow military spouse, had been picking him up twice a week since Nathan died. Olivia was downstairs, ostensibly working on a school project, but likely waiting to hear about the papers. I found her curled in the window seat, sketchpad open but untouched. She looked up as I entered, her eyes, so like her father's, searching my face. "It's happening, isn't it?" she asked quietly. "Grandma's trying to take us away." I sat beside her, showing her the top page of the filing. At 16, Olivia wasn't a child anymore, though I desperately wished I could shield her from adult problems. "Yes, she's filed for emergency custody." Olivia's hands clenched around her pencil. "She can't do that. She can't just take us." "She's trying, but we're going to fight it. I have a good lawyer, and more importantly, I have the truth." "About Dad? About what she did?" I nodded. "If it comes to that, yes." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the oak tree in our yard. "Did Dad ever try to stop? The affair, I mean." The question caught me off guard. We'd discussed Nathan's infidelity in therapy, the betrayal, the hurt, the complexity of loving someone who had caused such pain. But Olivia had never asked about redemption before. "I think he wanted to," I said carefully, thinking of the recorded phone call. "In his own way. But your grandmother, she made it very difficult for him to change. By paying for everything, by hiding it, that, and by convincing him it was normal, that it was what men in his position did." Olivia's gaze hardened. "That's messed up." "Yes, It is. So what do we do now? I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, relieved when she leaned into me instead of pulling away. We keep going. School, therapy, soccer games. We live our lives and show everyone that we're okay. Not perfect, but okay. And when we go to court, we tell the truth. All of it? Even the stuff that makes Dad look bad? I hesitated. Only if we have to. This isn't about punishing your father's memory, Olivia. It's about protecting you and Max from someone who doesn't respect your boundaries. She nodded slowly. Max is going to freak out. Probably, I agreed, but we'll handle it together. And I've already called Dr. Brennan to schedule an extra session for both of you this week. Mom? Olivia looked up at me, suddenly seeming younger than her 16 years. What if Grandma wins? The question hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression calm. She won't. The law favors keeping children with their primary caregiver unless there's clear evidence of harm. There isn't any, because I haven't harmed you. But she knows everyone. The judge probably. So we make sure the facts speak louder than connections. I squeezed her shoulder. I promise you, Olivia, I will not let anyone take you and Max away from this home. The sound of a car door slamming announced Max's return from practice. Olivia straightened, wiping quickly at her eyes. Let me help you tell him? He listens to me sometimes. Of course, I said, my throat tight with love for this young woman who carried so much on her narrow shoulders. Max bounded in minutes later, soccer cleats still on, tracking mud and grass across the entryway. Coach says I might start next game, he announced, dropping his gear bag by the door. Then he registered our expressions and his smile faltered. What's wrong? Olivia slid from the window seat and took her brother's hand. Family meeting, buddy, in the kitchen. I watched them head toward the back of the house, Olivia's arm protectively around Max's shoulders. For all her grief and anger, for all the adult burdens she'd been forced to bear, my daughter remained fundamentally kind. Eleanor had never understood that strength didn't have to look like power or control. Sometimes it looked like a teenage girl comforting her little brother while her own heart was breaking. In the kitchen, I made hot chocolate, a family tradition, for difficult conversations, while Olivia helped Max out of his muddy shoes. As I placed the mugs on the table, I caught sight of Eleanor's custody filing, the legal language stark and impersonal. She had framed her case carefully, positioning herself as the concerned grandmother stepping in to save her vulnerable grandchildren. But she had never really known these children. Not their resilience, not their wisdom, not the depth of their understanding. And that, I realized as we gathered around the table, might be her greatest weakness of all. Max took the news better than expected. At first. He sipped his hot chocolate silently while I explained in age-appropriate terms what his grandmother was trying to do. Olivia sat beside him, occasionally squeezing his hand when I mentioned court or custody. His initial questions were practical, almost detached. Would I still go to the same school? Would I have to quit soccer? Could I bring my Xbox? It wasn't until bedtime that the emotional impact hit him. I was tucking him, in our nightly ritual unchanged since Nathan's death, when Max suddenly grabbed my hand with surprising strength. I don't want to live with Grandma, he whispered, his voice cracking. Her house smells weird and she makes me wear scratchy clothes and she talks about Dad like he was perfect. I sat on the edge of his bed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. You won't have to, Max. I promise. But what if the judge doesn't believe you? What if Grandma's friends say bad things? I paused, considering my words carefully. Do you remember last year when Dustin told everyone you cheated on the math test, but you hadn't? He nodded, frowning at the memory. And remember how Mrs. Patterson looked at all the evidence, your work, the seating chart, your previous tests, and knew you were telling the truth? Another nod. That's what judges do. They look at evidence, not just what people say. And the Evidence shows that we're doing okay here, even though we miss Dad, and even though things are hard sometimes. Max was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on his Star Wars comforter. Grandma told me once that you made Dad sad. That's why he was gone so much. The words hit like a slap. When did she tell you that? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. At the funeral. When you were talking to Pastor Mike. She said Dad worked so hard because being home made him sad, and that's why he volunteered for de-deployments. He stumbled over the military term. I took a deep breath, tamping down the surge of anger. Your dad was deployed because that was his job as a soldier. And yes, sometimes things were hard between us, but that wasn't why he went away. He went because that's what he was trained to do. So, Grandma lied? I think Grandma sees things the way she wants to see them, not always the way they really are. Max considered this, his young face serious in the glow of his bedside lamp. Like when she says you don't take good care of us? Even though you make my lunch every day and come to all my games and help with homework even when you're super tired? Throat tightened. Exactly like that. Then the judge will see she's wrong, he said with sudden conviction. Because we can just tell the truth. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. That's exactly what we're going to do. After Max fell asleep, I found Olivia in her room, headphones on, aggressively organizing her desk, a coping mechanism she'd developed after Nathan's death. I tapped her door frame, and she pulled the headphones down around her neck. Max, okay? She asked, processing. You? She shrugged, sorting colored pens into precise rows. Did you know Grandma's been texting my friends? Casey showed me today. She asked if I ever seemed unstable, or if you ever appeared intoxicated at drop-offs. My stomach clenched. What did Casey say? That Grandma was being psycho and she blocked her number. Olivia's mouth twitched in a brief, almost smile. Casey's mom is calling the school tomorrow. She says it's inappropriate for an adult to contact minors that way. I sat on Olivia's bed, suddenly exhausted. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. All of it. It's not your fault. She capped a pen with decisive force. Grandma's always been like this, even before Dad died. Remember that time she told my 8th grade teacher I was too sensitive for accurate history lessons because I got upset about a Holocaust documentary? I did remember. The parent-teacher conference Eleanor had insisted on attending, her smooth assertion that Olivia's tears weren't genuine empathy, but rather a bid for attention. How deftly she had undermined my daughter's authentic emotional response and reframed it as manipulation. She never really sees us, Olivia continued, voicing my earlier thought. Just what she wants us to be, the perfect Blackwood grandchildren. That's going to work against her in court, I said. Judges consider children's preferences, especially at your age. Will I have to testify? There was a flicker of fear in her eyes. Maybe. We'll know more after I meet with the lawyer tomorrow. But if you do, you just tell the truth. About how you feel, about what you want, and about Dad? About what we found? I hesitated. Only if it's directly relevant to why you don't want to live with your grandmother. This isn't about punishing your father's memory or humiliating Eleanor. It's about keeping you and Max where you feel safe and loved. Olivia nodded, but her expression remained troubled. It's weird, isn't it? How we're fighting so hard to keep things together when just a year ago, everything was normal. Normal is relative, I said gently. We had challenges even then. But yes, I know what you mean. I miss him, she said suddenly, her voice small. Even after everything he did, even knowing he lied to us for years, I still miss him. Is that stupid? No, sweetheart. It's human. We can be angry at someone and still love them. We can be hurt by them and still miss them. Feelings don't cancel each other out. They exist together, sometimes in really messy ways. She blinked rapidly, turning back to her desk. Are you going to use James's evidence? The stuff about Grandma paying for Dad's... Whatever? Only if we have to. Only if she forces our hand. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of a textbook. She will, she said finally. She always pushes until she gets her way. Always. I couldn't argue with that assessment. In all the years I'd known Eleanor Blackwood, I'd never seen her concede defeat. Not in charity auctions, not in school board disputes, not even in friendly card games at family gatherings. She played to win, regardless of the cost. But then, she'd never played against a mother defending her children. And in that game, I was prepared to go all in. The next morning, I woke before dawn, my mind racing with strategies and counter-moves, like a chess player anticipating her opponent. I dressed carefully for my meeting with Karen, conservative but not stuffy, put together but not intimidating. Navy slacks, cream blouse, minimal makeup. The grieving but functional military widow, not trying too hard in either direction. Appearances mattered in this battle, though I hated to admit it. Eleanor understood this intrinsically. For decades, she had weaponized her impeccable image. The distinguished military wife, the pillar of the community, the devoted mother and grandmother. Her pearls and perfect coiffure were as much a part of her arsenal as her social connections. I dropped the kids at school, noting with unease the lingering stares from a cluster of mothers in the parking lot. News traveled fast in military circles, and Eleanor had friends everywhere. Olivia kept her head high, shepherding Max through the gauntlet with practiced indifference. I watched them disappear through the double doors, marveling at their resilience even as I worried about what whispers might follow them through the hallways. Karen's office was already bustling when I arrived, carrying a portable file box of documentation. Her assistant, a sharp-eyed young man with immaculate nails, ushered me into a conference room where Karen sat reviewing documents, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Good, you're prompt," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "We have much to cover, and Eleanor's legal team has already filed additional motions this morning." My stomach dropped. "What kind of motions?" "Request for psychological evaluation of both you and the children. Request for financial disclosure beyond the standard forms. And, this is the interesting one, motion to exclude any defamatory personal information not directly relevant to the custody matter." She looked up, her expression knowing. "She's anticipating you might have uncomfortable revelations and trying to block them preemptively." "Can she do that?" "She can try." Karen removed her glasses. "It suggests she's worried about what might come out in court. That's leverage we can use." For the next 2 hours, we methodically built our defense. Karen reviewed my financial records, the children's school reports, medical records, therapy notes, with appropriate releases, and character statements from teachers, coaches, and family friends. I watched her assemble the narrative of our lives, not perfect, but stable, loving, and healing. "Tell me about your support system," she said, making notes. "Who helps with the children? Who can testify to your parenting abilities?" I detailed our network. Other military spouses who understood the unique challenges of our lifestyle, neighbors who helped with carpooling, the grief counselor who had been working with all 3 of us since Nathan's death. I mentioned Sarah, my closest friend, who had moved in with us for 6 weeks after the funeral to help with meals and childcare, while I navigated the bureaucratic nightmare of death benefits and insurance claims. Good. Strong community ties work in our favor. Karen tapped her pen against the table. "Now, about these allegations of alcohol abuse, any truth at all? Even occasional overindulgence that someone might have witnessed?" I shook my head. "I have maybe 1 glass of wine a week, if that." After Nathan died, I was on anti-anxiety medication that couldn't be mixed with alcohol. I haven't had more than a single drink in any sitting for over a year. Prescription medication? That'll come up. Short-term, prescribed by our family doctor, taken as directed, discontinued after 3 months. I have the records. Karen nodded approvingly. What about dating? New relationships? The question startled me. No, nothing. I've barely had time to breathe, let alone date. Eleanor might suggest otherwise. Military widow, relatively young, financially secure. It's an easy narrative to spin that you're prioritizing a new relationship over the children's needs. I stared at her. That's absurd. I can barely manage work and the kids' schedules, let alone dating. I believe you, but we need to be prepared for every angle of attack. Karen leaned forward. Audrey, you need to understand something. This case isn't really about the children's welfare. If it were, Eleanor would have genuine evidence of neglect or harm, which she doesn't. This is about control, about narrative, about Eleanor's image in the community and her belief that she knows best. I know, I said quietly. It always has. Been? Which means she won't fight fair and she won't back down easily. Karen's expression softened slightly. How are Olivia and Max handling this? As well as can be expected. Olivia is angry but focused. Max is confused, scared. Both of them are clear they don't want to live with Eleanor. Their preferences matter, especially Olivia's at 16. The judge will almost certainly interview them privately. My chest tightened at the thought of my children in a judge's chambers, being questioned about family trauma. They've been through so much already. Yes, they have. Which is precisely why we're going to make sure they don't go through any more unnecessary pain. Karen gathered the documents into orderly piles. Here's our strategy. First, we file our response to the emergency petition, emphasizing the lack of any immediate danger and requesting dismissal of the emergency provisions. Second, we prepare for the psychological evaluations. I'll connect you with professionals who are fair and thorough. Third, we begin informal discovery to see exactly what evidence Eleanor thinks she has. And the motion to exclude personal information? Karen smiled thinly. We oppose it, of course, while emphasizing that we have no intention of bringing in irrelevant material, but that Eleanor's character, motivations, and previous interactions with the children are absolutely relevant to this case. As I drove home, I mentally rehearsed how I would explain all this to Olivia and Max in age-appropriate ways. The legal maneuvers, the evaluations, the interviews. It would feel invasive, clinical, a dissection of our grieving family under fluorescent lights. My phone rang through the car speakers, startling me from my thoughts. Colonel Rivera's name flashed on the dashboard display. Audrey, he said when I answered, his voice grave. I thought you should know. Eleanor called an emergency meeting of the Military Family Support Foundation board last night. She's stepping down as chair, citing personal family obligations that require her full attention. The gossip is that she's preparing to take in her grandchildren due to an unfit home environment. My fingers tightened around the steering. Wheelchair, she's setting the stage, precisely, and she's collecting allies. Several board members reached out to me afterward, concerned about you and the children. She's painting a very specific picture. Thank you for telling me, sir. There's more, he continued reluctantly. She mentioned that she's concerned about Nathan's life insurance and benefits, suggested that perhaps the foundation should establish a trust for the children's future education, separate from your control. Cold anger washed through me. The life insurance policy Nathan had maintained was substantial, enough to pay off our mortgage, cover the children's college educations, and provide financial security during our transition. Eleanor had no legal claim to it, but she was clearly laying groundwork to challenge my management of those funds. She won't stop, will she? I said, more to myself than to the colonel. Eleanor Blackwood has built her identity around being in control, he replied, first as the general's wife, then as Nathan's mother, now as the family matriarch. I don't think she knows how to exist without that role. After thanking him, I ended the call and pulled into our driveway, sitting for a moment in the quiet car. Through the window I could see our home, the porch swing Nathan had built, the flower beds Olivia had planted last spring, Max's bicycle leaning against the garage door. Our imperfect, healing space. Eleanor wanted to take this from us, to reshape my children according to her vision of the perfect Blackwood legacy. She was willing to lie, manipulate, and destroy to accomplish that goal. My moment of hesitation evaporated. If Eleanor wanted war, she would have it, but on my terms, with truth as my primary weapon. I reached for my phone and called James. "I need everything," I said when he answered. "All of it. It's time." James delivered a comprehensive dossier to Karen's office the next day. 3 thick binders of meticulously organized evidence spanning nearly 20 years. Financial records showing Eleanor's manipulation of Nathan's career choices. Emails between Eleanor and various military officials where she leveraged her husband's reputation to secure advantageous postings for Nathan. Documentation of the discretionary fund she had established for Vanessa, disguised as a contract employee for her charity. Most damning was a series of text messages between Eleanor and Nathan from just 2 months before his death. In them, Nathan explicitly stated his intention to request a transfer to a teaching position at the military academy, a prestigious but non-combat role that would keep him stateside with his family. Eleanor's response was cold, calculating. "Consider carefully before throwing away everything we've built. Your current trajectory points to general within 10 years. A teaching post is career suicide. Remember your obligations." The obligations, James had noted in his summary, included substantial financial incentives tied to Nathan's continued combat deployments, bonuses that flowed through accounts Eleanor helped manage. My husband had essentially been paid to stay, in harm's way, to maintain the Blackwood military legacy his mother valued above his safety or our family's stability. Karen reviewed everything with clinical detachment, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. When she finished, she removed her reading glasses and regarded me steadily. "This is exceptionally thorough," she said, "and profoundly disturbing." Eleanor Blackwood effectively bribed her son to maintain a lifestyle that ultimately contributed to his death, while simultaneously enabling his infidelity to preserve her social standing. She paused. "Are you certain you want to use this?" I considered the question carefully. The evidence would devastate Eleanor's reputation in the military community she had cultivated for decades. It would tarnish Nathan's memory in ways that might hurt Olivia and Max. It would expose our family's private pain to public scrutiny. "I want to use it as leverage," I said finally. "I don't want this in court records or public testimony if it can be avoided. But Eleanor needs to understand what she's risking by pursuing this custody case." Karen nodded. "A strategic settlement approach. We present enough in our initial response to make her lawyers nervous, then offer private mediation as an alternative to public proceedings." "Exactly. This isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about protecting my children from further manipulation." "A commendable position," Karen said, closing the binder. "Though I should warn you, Eleanor may not see it. That way, people who have maintained control through secrecy and manipulation often react unpredictably when threatened with exposure." Her warning proved prophetic. 3 days later, as I was leaving the grocery store with Max, Eleanor appeared beside my car, immaculately dressed in a pale blue suit that matched her eyes, Nathan's eyes. "Audrey," she said, her voice honeyed with false warmth. "Max, darling, give Grandma a hug." Max pressed against my side, his small body tense. "Mom said we're not supposed to talk to you without her lawyer." Eleanor's smile tightened. "That's silly, sweetheart. I'm your grandmother." "You're also suing for custody," I said quietly, positioning myself between them. "Which makes this conversation inappropriate. Please step away from my car." "Don't be dramatic." She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. "I came to give you this, a settlement offer. Much more generous than you deserve considering your behavior." I didn't take the envelope. Any communications should go through our attorneys. I thought you might prefer to handle this privately, for the children's sake. Her gaze flicked meaningfully to Max, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. The court process can be so invasive, so public. Every aspect of your life examined, every decision questioned. She smiled thinly. Every relationship scrutinized. The implied threat was clear. Are you attempting to blackmail me, Eleanor? Blackmail? Goodness, no. I'm offering a compromise, joint custody, generous financial support, a united front for the community. She extended the envelope again. Much. Better than airing the family's dirty laundry, don't you think? Max tugged at my sleeve. Mom, can we go? Please? Of course, honey. I looked directly at Eleanor. Send it to Karen. And Eleanor, if you approach my children again without permission, I'll file for a restraining order. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Her composure slipped for just a moment, her eyes flashing with the same cold anger I'd seen when Nathan announced our engagement years ago, an anger at having her control challenged. You're making a serious mistake, Audrey. There are things about Nathan you don't know. Things that would break those children's hearts. No, Eleanor. There are things you don't know. I helped Max into the car, then turned back to her. Like, the fact that Nathan called me the night before he died. Like the fact that he told me everything. About Vanessa. About your arrangements. About how trapped he felt. Like the fact that we were going to try again on honest terms this time. When he came home. It was a lie. Nathan had never confessed, never reached out for reconciliation. But watching the blood drain from Eleanor's perfectly made-up face made the deception worthwhile. For once, she was the one off balance, the one without the upper hand. You're lying, she whispered. Check his phone records, I suggested calmly. 11:43 p.m., the night before the ambush. A 28-minute call to our home phone. I have the records if you'd like to see them. I did have records of a call that night, a routine check-in with the children that I'd stepped away from to give them privacy with their father. Eleanor. Couldn't know what was discussed, and the uncertainty would gnaw at her. As we drove away, Max remained uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, as we turned onto our street, he asked, Did Dad really tell you about the other lady before he died? Gripped the steering wheel, regretting that he had overheard. That's complicated, Max. That means no, he said with the direct insight of a 12-year-old. You were tricking Grandma. I was creating doubt. Sometimes when people are very sure of themselves, very convinced they're right, the only way to make them reconsider is to introduce uncertainty. He considered this. Like a military strategy? Dad used to talk about that, making the enemy think you know something they don't. Something like that? Yes. I don't think I like it, he said, after a moment. Even if Grandma is being mean, his moral clarity pierced through my defensive rationalizations. You're right, I admitted. It wasn't honest, and honesty matters. I'll try to remember that. He nodded, apparently satisfied with my acknowledgement, and bounded out of the car. As soon as we parked, eager to return to the normalcy of video games and snacks. Inside, I found Olivia at the dining table with homework spread around her. She looked up expectantly. Did you get the bread I asked for? Yes, and we also ran into your grandmother in the parking lot. Olivia stiffened. What did she want? To offer a settlement, joint custody, financial support. Tell me you said no. I told her to send it to our lawyer. I set the groceries on the counter. Liv, things might get more complicated before they get better. Eleanor implied she's willing to bring up painful details about your dad if we don't agree to her terms. Olivia's expression darkened. Like we don't already know the worst. We might not, I said gently. Your grandmother has been managing your father's life, and our perception of it, for a very long time. I don't care what else she knows, Olivia said, her voice rising. I don't care if Dad had 10 affairs or robbed banks or whatever. I'm not living with her. She's poison. The vehemence in her voice startled me. Olivia, no, Mom, you don't get it. It's not just about Dad or the affair or any of that stuff. It's about her. The way she makes me feel like I'm never good enough, never Blackwood enough. The way she criticizes everything. My clothes, my interests, my friends. The way she tries to erase you, like you're just some inconvenient detail in the great Blackwood. Legacy. Tears welled in her eyes. I won't do it. I'll run away first. I moved around the table and pulled her into a hug, feeling her thin shoulders shake with suppressed sobs. You won't have to run anywhere. This is your home, and you're staying right here, promise? She whispered against my shoulder, suddenly sounding much younger than 16. With everything I have, I replied, stroking her hair. With everything I am. Karen called early the next morning, her tone uncharacteristically cautious. Eleanor's attorneys reached out. They'd like to schedule a private meeting, principals and legal counsel only. They received our response? I had spent hours with Karen crafting a detailed rebuttal to Eleanor's emergency custody petition, including just enough of James's evidence to suggest we had more. Yes, and apparently it made an impression. They're suddenly very interested in keeping this matter out of court. Karen paused. But, Audrey, be prepared for nastiness. When people like Eleanor feel cornered, they often lash out. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon at Karen's office, neutral territory. I arranged for Sarah to pick up the kids from school, briefed her on the ongoing situation, and tried to project calm confidence when Olivia peppered me with questions about what would happen. Just a meeting to discuss options, I assured her, straightening the collar of her uniform, before she left for school. Nothing will be decided without talking to you and Max first. If Grandma offers money, don't take it, Olivia said fiercely. We don't need her money. I smoothed her hair. This isn't about money, sweetheart. It's about what's best for you. And Max. We know what's best for us, she replied with teenage certainty. Being here, with you, away from her. I carried her conviction with me as I entered Karen's conference room the next day. Eleanor sat beside her attorney, a silver-haired man with an expensive suit and calculating eyes. She wore black, a calculated choice, I was sure, to emphasize her role as the grieving mother. Her face betrayed nothing when I took my seat across from her, though her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her leather portfolio. The pleasantries were minimal, the atmosphere frigid. Karen opened by summarizing our position. The emergency custody petition lacked merit. The children were thriving in my care, and any disruption to their current living situation would cause unnecessary trauma. She also noted, with deliberate casualness, that we had extensive documentation regarding Eleanor's past interference in family matters. Eleanor's attorney, introduced as Harrison Wells of a prestigious firm in the state capital, countered with a practiced speech about Eleanor's deep concern for her grandchildren's welfare, her extensive resources, and her unique ability to preserve Nathan's legacy in their lives. Mrs. Blackwood is prepared to be extremely generous, he added, sliding a document across the table. Full financial support for the children through college, including private school tuition, maintenance of the family home, even a stipend for Mrs. Mitchell to pursue further education or career advancement. Karen didn't touch the document. My client doesn't need financial incentives to share her children's time. She needs assurance that their emotional well-being will be respected. Of course, Wells said smoothly. Mrs. Blackwood is eager to mend any misunderstandings that may have developed. She values family above all else. Enough, Eleanor interrupted, her composed facade cracking slightly. Let's dispense with the diplomatic nonsense. Audrey knows why we're here. Wells looked startled by his client's interruption, but Eleanor pressed on, fixing me with an arctic stare. You think you have leverage because of Nathan's indiscretions, because of choices I helped him manage for the sake of his career and our family name. Her voice remained steady, controlled. You don't understand what's at stake. You never have. I understand that you manipulated your son's life to fulfill your own ambitions, I replied quietly. I understand that you facilitated his affair to keep him deployed, away from his family. And I understand that you're now trying to control his children the same way you controlled him. Color rose in Eleanor's cheeks. Not embarrassment, but anger. Nathan was weak, like his father. Men of their position, their potential, need guidance, structure. I provided that. At what cost? I leaned forward. He's gone, Eleanor. Your control, your manipulation, your guidance, none of it kept him safe. None of it made him happy. And now you want to do the same to Olivia and Max. I want to give them everything Nathan would have wanted for them. No, I said firmly. You want to give them everything you wanted for Nathan. There's a difference. Wells cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the personal turn. Perhaps we should focus on practical arrangements. Mrs. Blackwood is proposing alternate weekends, shared holidays, and 3 weeks during summer vacation. Karen shook her head. Given the circumstances and the children's expressed preferences, we're proposing supervised visitation only, at least initially. 2 hours, twice monthly, in a neutral location with a family therapist present. That's insulting, Eleanor snapped. I'm their grandmother, not some criminal. You're a woman who called a 15-year-old girl heartless at a public pool, I countered, who told a 12-year-old boy his father was unhappy because of his mother, who has systematically attempted to undermine my relationship with my children since their father died. I've done everything for this family. Eleanor's composure was fully fracturing now, her carefully maintained facade crumbling under the weight of challenge. Everything! While you were playing house in that ridiculous farmhouse, I was protecting the Blackwood name, ensuring Nathan's advancement, securing the children's future. The children have names, Eleanor. Olivia and Max, not the Blackwood heirs, not pawns in your social chess game. Real children who are grieving their father and rebuilding their lives. She straightened, regaining some of her poise. You have no idea what I know, Audrey. No idea what Nathan confided in me over the years. Things about you, about your marriage, about your inadequacies as a wife. Are you prepared for those details to become public record? Karen started to intervene, but I held up my hand, meeting Eleanor's gaze directly. I'm not afraid of the truth, Eleanor. My children already know their father was unfaithful. They know our marriage was complicated. They know I'm not perfect. I've never pretended to be. I kept my voice level, controlled. But they also know I've never lied to them. I've never manipulated them. I've never used them as extensions of my own ego. This is outrageous, Wells interjected. Mrs. Blackwood has only the children's best interests at heart. Then she can demonstrate that by respecting their wishes, Karen said firmly. Both children have clearly expressed their desire to maintain distance from their grandmother at this time. Any genuine concern for their welfare would honor that. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. They're children. They don't know what they need. They know exactly what they need, I responded. Safety, consistency, honesty. Things that have been in short supply around you. Wells leaned toward Eleanor, murmuring something in her ear. She listened, lips pressed into a thin line, then gave a curt nod. My client would like a brief recess, he announced. Perhaps 20 minutes to review your proposal and consider alternatives. As they left the conference room, Karen turned to me with raised eyebrows. That went about as expected. She's rattled. She's dangerous, I corrected. This isn't over. No, but we've shifted the dynamic. She came in expecting to dictate terms. From a position of strength. Now she's on the defensive. Karen gathered her notes. When they return, stay calm no matter what she says or threatens. Remember, If she had anything truly damaging, she would have included it in the initial filing. When Eleanor and Wells returned, something had changed. Eleanor's expression was composed again, but there was a new quality to it, a calculated resolve that sent warning signals through my body. After consideration, Wells began formally, Mrs. Blackwood would like to propose a modified arrangement. Supervised visitation, as you suggested, with a family therapist, increasing gradually based on the children's comfort level and professional recommendation. I exchanged a surprised glance with Karen. This easy capitulation was unexpected and suspicious. However, he continued, Mrs. Blackwood has one non-negotiable condition. She requests that James Ellis cease all involvement with the Mitchell family immediately. My pulse quickened. James is a family friend. He's been supporting us since Nathan's death. James Ellis has been conducting an unauthorized investigation into the Blackwood family for years, Eleanor said coldly. Collecting information, recording, conversations, compiling files, activities that border on stalking and certainly constitute invasion of privacy. James was Nathan's closest friend, I countered. Everything he did was with Nathan's knowledge and approval. That's a claim you can't substantiate, since my son isn't here to confirm or deny it. Eleanor's smile was sharp as broken glass. But I can substantiate the harassment claim I'll file against Mr. Ellis if he continues his activities. Karen stepped in smoothly. My client's personal friendships aren't relevant to the custody arrangement. They are when those friendships involve systematic efforts to defame Mrs. Blackwood and, by extension, her son's memory. Wells slid another document forward. We're prepared to withdraw the emergency custody petition entirely if Mrs. Mitchell will agree to these terms, including the Ellis stipulation. I stared at the document, understanding the game now. Eleanor couldn't risk what else James might have discovered, what other secrets he might have documented over the years. She was willing to retreat on the custody front to neutralize the greater threat to her carefully constructed public image. You're afraid, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. Not of losing the children, but of losing control of the narrative. What I fear, Eleanor replied with glacial precision, is allowing my grandchildren to be influenced by a man who has harbored an irrational vendetta against their grandfather and me for over 20 years. James Ellis was denied admission to West Point after General Blackwood declined to provide a recommendation. His obsession with damaging our family stems from that rejection. I almost laughed at the absurdity of her claim. James attended Stanford on a full academic scholarship. He never applied to any military academy. Perhaps that's what he told you, Eleanor countered. But I have documentation indicating otherwise. Karen intervened before I could respond. We'll need to review any such documentation before discussing this condition further. In the meantime, let's focus on the visitation proposal. The next hour proceeded with careful negotiation of terms, timing, location, selection of the therapist, holiday arrangements. Throughout it all, Eleanor maintained a composed facade, though her eyes betrayed occasional flashes of calculation whenever James's name arose. By the end, we had a tentative framework. Supervised visits twice monthly, gradually increasing based on the children's comfort and the therapist's assessment. Shared information about school and medical matters, and a clear acknowledgement that I retained full legal custody and decision-making authority. The James Ellis condition remained unresolved, noted as pending further discussion in the draft agreement. As the meeting concluded, Eleanor remained seated while Wells gathered their materials. A moment alone with Audrey, please, she requested, her tone making it clear this wasn't a question. Karen glanced at me questioningly. I nodded slightly. I could handle Eleanor. When the attorneys had stepped outside, Eleanor leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands flat on the table between us. You think you've won? This isn't about winning or losing, I replied evenly. It's about what's best for Olivia and Max. If that were true, you'd want them to have every advantage I can provide. Connections, opportunities, entree into circles that will secure their futures. Her voice remained controlled, but intensity radiated from her like heat. You're denying them their birthright out of spite. Their birthright. Their children, Eleanor, not medieval heirs to a kingdom. The Blackwood name means something in this community, in military circles nationwide. My husband served with distinction for 40 years. Nathan gave his life for this country. That legacy belongs to Olivia and Max. I studied her face, the familiar features that had been passed down to Nathan and then to Max, the aristocratic bone structure, the penetrating blue eyes. For the first time, I saw beyond the formidable facade to the desperate fear beneath. Eleanor Blackwood was terrified of irrelevance, of being sidelined in her own carefully constructed narrative. The children will always know where they come from, I said more gently. They'll know their father's service, their grandfather's, achievements. But they'll also forge their own paths. Olivia may never join the military. She's talking about environmental science these days. Max might follow in Nathan's footsteps, or he might become a soccer coach or a video game designer, or something we haven't even imagined yet. You're deliberately misunderstanding me, Eleanor snapped. This isn't just about military service. It's about standards, expectations, a way of life. Your way of life nearly destroyed my marriage before Nathan died, I said quietly. It taught my husband that appearances mattered more than honesty. That duty to family name outweighed personal integrity. I won't let my children grow up believing those same lies. Eleanor's eyes flashed. Nathan understood what was expected of him, and it made him miserable. You know that, Eleanor. Deep down, you must know that. Something flickered across her face, a momentary crack in her certainty, quickly concealed. I did what was necessary, what any mother would do. No. I shook my head slowly. Not what any mother would do. What you thought was best, filtered through your own fears and ambitions. I understand that impulse. I feel it too. But the difference is that I'm willing to let my children become who they're meant to be, not who I need them to be. She gathered. Her purse, her movements precise and controlled. This agreement is a temporary measure. The children will come around eventually. Blood tells, Audrey. In the end, they're Blackwoods. They're half Blackwood, I corrected gently. And they're growing up in a different world than the one you built your identity around. The military has changed. Society has changed. Your grandchildren will navigate that new reality, and they'll need guidance that looks forward, not backward. Eleanor stood, straightening her immaculate jacket. We'll see. Time has a way of revealing what truly matters. On that, at least, we agree. As Eleanor walked toward the door, her spine military straight, her heels clicking precisely on the hardwood floor, she paused without turning around. Nathan called me the night before he died too. 11:15. Right before he called. You! My breath caught. I hadn't expected her to know about the timing of Nathan's final call home. He told me he was tired, she continued, her voice softer now. Tired of the lies. Tired of the double life. He said when he got home things would change. I thought he meant he was finally leaving you. She turned slightly, her profile sharp against the light from the window. Maybe I was wrong about that. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me with the unsettling possibility that in Nathan's final days, he might have been seeking a different kind of truth than either Eleanor or I had understood. Karen returned, closing the door behind her. Well? What else did she say? I shook my head, still processing. She's not giving up. This is a strategic retreat, not a surrender. I didn't expect otherwise. Karen collected her notes. But we've achieved our primary objective, the emergency. Petition will be withdrawn. Your custody remains secure, and any future modifications will go through proper channels with appropriate evidence. And, James, we didn't agree to anything regarding Mr. Ellis. If Eleanor wants to pursue harassment charges against him, she's welcome to try. But from what you've shared, his investigation was conducted with Nathan's consent and involved legally obtained documentation. Not a strong case for her. I nodded, relief washing through me. So it's over? For now? The immediate threat is neutralized. We'll finalize the visitation agreement, file the necessary paperwork, and monitor compliance. Karen's expression softened, slightly. You did well today, Audrey. Stood your ground without escalating unnecessarily. I had good motivation, I replied, thinking of Olivia and Max waiting at home, their futures momentarily secured from Eleanor's controlling influence. As I drove home, Eleanor's parting words echoed in my mind. Nathan's final days had clearly been filled with internal conflict, with recognition of the complex web of lies and manipulations that had defined his life. Had he truly been planning to change? To break free from Eleanor's influence? To rebuild our family on honest terms? Would never know for certain. But as I pulled into our driveway, seeing Max's soccer ball on the lawn and Olivia's bike leaning against the porch, I realized it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that my children would grow up with the freedom Nathan never had. The freedom to define themselves beyond anyone else's expectations, to make mistakes, to live authentically. Eleanor was right about one thing. Time would reveal what truly mattered. And I was increasingly confident that history would not repeat itself in this family. I found Olivia and Max waiting in the kitchen with Sarah, an untouched plate of cookies between them, tension evident in their rigid postures. Max jumped up the moment I walked through the door. What happened? Do we have to go live with her? His voice quavered despite his obvious attempt to sound brave. I set my purse down and opened my arms. He hesitated only a second before rushing into them, still, young enough to accept comfort openly. Olivia remained at the table, her expression guarded, fingers nervously tracing the wood grain patterns. No one's going anywhere, I assured them, extending one arm toward Olivia, who finally rose and joined our huddle. The emergency petition is being withdrawn. You're staying right here, with me, in our home. Relief washed over their faces, though. Olivia's skepticism remained. Just like that? Grandma gave up? Sarah slipped quietly toward the door, giving us privacy for this family moment. I mouthed, "Thank you," as she departed with a supportive smile. Not exactly gave up, I explained, guiding them to sit at the kitchen table. We reached a compromise. She'll have supervised visits twice a month with a therapist present. If those go well, if you're comfortable, they might gradually increase over time. Max's brow furrowed. Do we have to go? I think it would be good to try, I said carefully. With proper boundaries and professional support, she is your father's mother, and that connection matters, even with all the complications. What if she says more mean things? Max pressed. What if she lies about Dad or about you? That's why the therapist will be there, to keep the conversations healthy and to help everyone communicate better. I squeezed his hand. And you can always tell me afterward if something doesn't feel right. Olivia had remained silent, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she asked, "What did she say when you told her no? She must have been furious." She was controlled, I answered truthfully. Disappointed, certainly. But I think somewhere deep down, she knows she overstepped. She knows the courts wouldn't have sided with her without real evidence of problems here. She'll try again, Olivia said with certainty beyond her years. She always does. She never accepts no. Maybe, I acknowledged, but we've established clear legal boundaries now. And more importantly, you two have shown incredible strength and clarity about what you need. That matters in family court, especially as you get older, Olivia. Max seemed satisfied with this explanation, his thoughts already turning toward more immediate concerns. Can I still go to Ben's birthday party on Saturday? Of course, I laughed, ruffling his hair. Regular life continues. That's the whole point. As Max started off to call his friend, Olivia remained at the table, studying me with her perceptive gaze. You're not telling us everything, she said quietly. Something else happened. Sometimes, I forgot how intuitive she was, how little escaped her notice. Your grandmother had some interesting conditions for the agreement. I chose my words carefully. She wanted to restrict who we could have in our lives. Specifically, she wanted me to cut ties with James. Olivia's eyebrows rose. Dad's friend? The investigator guy? Why? Does she care about him? Because he knows things about the Blackwood family that your grandmother would prefer stay buried. Things beyond what we already know. Did you agree? No. That was a non-negotiable for me. James has been a true friend to this family, and I won't cut him out because Eleanor feels threatened. Olivia nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. Good. She hesitated, then asked more tentatively, Mom? What happens if we learn more stuff about Dad? Worse stuff? The question pierced my heart. Then we deal with it together, with honesty and compassion. Your father was a complex person who made mistakes, but he also loved you both very much. Both things can be true at once. I've been having these dreams, she admitted, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Dad's trying to tell me something, but I can't hear him over Grandma's voice. She keeps talking over him, louder and louder until he just fades away. I reached across the table and took her hand. What do you think he'd want to say? If Eleanor wasn't there drowning him out? Olivia stared at our intertwined fingers for a long moment. That he's sorry. That he got lost somewhere along the way. That he wants us to be free in ways he never was. Her eyes, so like her father's, met mine. Is that stupid? No, sweetheart. I think that sounds exactly like what the real Nathan, not Eleanor's perfect military son, but the man I fell in love with years ago would want to say. She nodded, blinking rapidly. I miss that version of him. The one from my earliest memories before he started doing so many deployments. Before he started looking through us instead of at us when he came home. I miss him too, I admitted. And I think he missed himself. That evening, after the kids were settled with homework and dinner was cleared away, I called James to update him on the meeting's outcome. He listened without interruption as I detailed Eleanor's allegations about his supposed vendetta. West Point rejection? That's creative, he commented when I finished. For the record, I did apply, and was accepted, but chose Stanford instead. The general actually wrote one of my recommendations. I figured it was fabricated. She was desperate to discredit you. Because the evidence is solid and she knows it. James paused. Audrey, there's something else you should know. Something I didn't include in the files because it felt too personal, too painful, especially for the kids. My stomach tightened. What is it? Nathan was planning to leave the military before his final deployment. He'd already spoken with contacts at 3 universities about teaching positions. He had a resignation letter drafted. But then something changed. Suddenly, he volunteered for one more tour. I never understood why, until I tracked the timing. What happened? Eleanor had a minor stroke. Nothing life-threatening, but it scared her. And immediately afterward, Nathan changed course, recommitted to his military career, signed up for the deployment that ultimately killed him. I closed my eyes, the pieces falling into place. She used her health to manipulate him, to keep him in line. It fits the pattern, James said gently. I just thought you should know. Not to use against her, but to understand the hold she had over him. The psychological leverage. After we hung up, I sat on the back porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors Nathan would have appreciated. The complexity of his relationship with his mother, the mixture of duty, guilt, resentment, and obligation, had shaped every aspect of his life, including our marriage. In his own way, he had been as much a victim of Eleanor's machinations as the rest of us. The realization didn't excuse his choices, but it contextualized them. It allowed me to hold his memory with compassion rather than bitterness. A movement caught my eye. Olivia had come outside, wrapped in her father's old Air Force Academy sweatshirt that had become her comfort clothing since his death. "Can I join you?" she asked, hovering by the porch steps. I patted the swing beside me, and she curled up like she used to as a little girl, her long legs tucked beneath her. We swayed in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the light fade from the sky. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about what you said earlier, about Grandma." "What part?" "About how she couldn't let Dad be who he was meant to be. How she needed him to be something specific for her own reasons." She picked at a loose thread on the sweatshirt cuff. "I don't want to be like that, ever, with anyone." That's a powerful insight, Liv. "It makes me sad, though," she continued. "For Dad. For Grandma, even, in a weird way. It must be exhausting, trying to control everything all the time, never feeling like anything is enough. Her empathy, her ability to see beyond the hurt to the human complexity beneath, filled me with profound pride. Despite everything, the loss, the betrayal, the ongoing conflict, my daughter was developing wisdom beyond her years. "You know what?" I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "With that perspective, you're already freer than your grandmother has ever been." Olivia leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture that had become rarer as she navigated the turbulent waters of adolescence. "We're going to be okay, aren't we? The three of us?" As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I pulled her closer. "Yes, my brave girl. We already are." The final paperwork formalizing our custody agreement arrived 6 weeks later. A stack of documents with multiple signature lines, official stamps, and legal language that reduced our family's complex emotional landscape to clinical terms and visitation schedules. I signed where indicated, had the papers notarized, and returned them to Karen, who filed them with the court. Just like that, the legal battle that had consumed our lives was officially resolved. The first supervised visit was scheduled for the following Saturday at the office of Dr. Marissa Chen, a family therapist specializing in high-conflict custody situations. Olivia approached it with wary resignation, while Max oscillated between nervous anticipation and stubborn resistance. I spent the morning reassuring them both, emphasizing that they could express their true feelings in that safe space without fear of consequences. "Remember," I told them as we pulled into the parking lot of the nondescript professional building, "Dr. Chen is there for you, not for Grandma or for me. If something feels uncomfortable, you say so. If you need a break, you ask for one. Your feelings matter here." Olivia nodded grimly, smoothing her carefully selected outfit. Neat, but not formal, showing Eleanor that life outside her influence didn't mean deteriorating standards. But neither did it require the performative formality she had always imposed on family gatherings. Eleanor was already waiting in the reception area, impeccable as always in a conservative dress and pearls, a small gift bag positioned precisely on her lap. She stood when we entered, her expression a careful blend of warmth and restraint. The children stiffened beside me. "Olivia, Max," she greeted them, her voice gentler than I had heard it in months. "It's so good to see you both." Dr. Chen emerged from her office before the awkward moment could stretch further. A woman in her 50s with a calm demeanor and perceptive eyes, she guided us through introductions and explained the format for these initial visits. First a group session to establish ground rules, then time for Eleanor with the children while I waited outside, concluding with a brief check-in altogether. The group session proceeded with professional efficiency. Dr. Chen established clear boundaries, no disparaging comments about any family member, No pressing for information the children weren't comfortable sharing. No discussions of the legal proceedings. Eleanor agreed to everything with surprising grace, her eyes frequently drifting to her grandchildren with an expression I had rarely seen from her: uncertainty. When it was time for me to leave, Max shot me a panicked glance. I smiled reassuringly and squeezed his shoulder. "I'll be right outside. 45 minutes. In the waiting room, I tried to distract myself with magazines, but found it impossible to focus. What was happening behind that closed door? Was Eleanor respecting the boundaries, or slipping in subtle manipulations? Were my children standing firm, or yielding to the formidable personality who had shaped their father's entire life? The 45 minutes crawled by like hours. When Dr. Chen finally opened her door, I rose immediately, searching her professional expression for clues. The children emerged first, Olivia's face composed but with telltale redness around her eyes, Max clutching a small model airplane that must have been in Eleanor's gift bag. Eleanor followed a moment later, her perfect posture intact but something different in her bearing, a subdued quality I had never associated with her. The final check-in was brief. Dr. Chen confirmed another session in 2 weeks, reminding everyone of the established guidelines. As we prepared to leave, Eleanor approached me while the children gathered their things. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for allowing this. I know you had every reason not to." The simple acknowledgement, free from her usual defensive posturing, caught me off guard. "They need healthy relationships with all their family," I replied, "even when it's complicated." Something flickered across her face. Regret, perhaps, or resignation. "They've grown so much. Olivia is remarkably articulate about her feelings." "Yes, she is." Eleanor hesitated, then added, "She has questions about Nathan that I wasn't prepared for, about who he really was, beneath everything else. I'm not sure I know how to answer those. Maybe that's something to explore together," I suggested cautiously. "All of us learning who he was, beyond the roles we needed him to play." She nodded slightly, her gaze drifting to where Olivia was helping Max put on his jacket. "Perhaps." Then, with a return of her more familiar composure, she straightened her shoulders. "I'll see you in 2 weeks then." In the car afterward, I waited for the children to offer information when they felt ready. Max broke the silence first, holding up the model airplane. "Grandma got me this. It's the same kind Dad flew sometimes." His expression was conflicted, pleasure at the gift warring with lingering wariness. "She said I don't have to be a pilot if I don't want to, that she just thought I might like to build it." "That was considerate of her," I said carefully. "Yeah." He turned the model over in his hands. She seemed different, less scary. Olivia gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's because Dr. Chen was there. She couldn't go full grandma mode with a witness." "Liv," I cautioned. "We're trying to move forward constructively," she sighed. "I know. And she did try. She actually listened when I told her how it felt when she criticized everything about us. She didn't defend herself or make excuses. That was new." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Did you feel heard?" "Kind of." Olivia stared out the window. She asked about Dad, about my memories of him. Not the perfect soldier stuff, but real things. Like she actually wanted to know what he was like with us. "And what did you tell her?" A small smile touched her lips. "About the time he built that ridiculous blanket fort in the living room when you were visiting your sister. How we ate ice cream for dinner and watched movies until midnight. How he did different voices for all the characters when he read to us." Warmth spread through my chest at these glimpses of Nathan as he had been in his best moments. Playful, loving, free from the weight of expectations and obligations. "Those are beautiful memories to share," she cried. Max interjected, sounding surprised. "Grandma actually cried. Not a lot, just her eyes got wet. She said she never saw that side of him. The revelation hung in the air between us. The tragedy of a mother who had been so focused on shaping her son into her vision of perfection that she had missed the joy of knowing him as he truly was. 6 months passed, each supervised visit gradually, building a new, tentative relationship between Eleanor and the children. There were setbacks, moments when her controlling nature resurfaced, when old patterns threatened to re-emerge. But Dr. Chen's steady guidance and the children's newfound confidence in expressing their boundaries helped steer these interactions back to healthier ground. Eleanor never directly apologized for the custody battle, but her actions spoke volumes. She stopped interfering in our daily lives. She respected the visitation schedule without pushing for more. Most significantly, she began asking questions instead of making pronouncements, genuine inquiries about the children's interests, opinions, and feelings that acknowledged them as individuals, not extensions of the Blackwood legacy. One afternoon in late spring, I received an unexpected email from her. The formal, almost stilted language couldn't quite mask the vulnerability beneath. "Audrey, I have been sorting through Nathan's childhood belongings in preparation for some home renovations. There are items I believe Olivia and Max might value. School, projects, photographs, memorabilia from his early years. Things that show sides of him perhaps none of us fully appreciated while he was here. If agreeable to you, I would like to share these with them during our next visit." Dr. Chen has already approved this activity as appropriate and constructive. Additionally, I have been reflecting on our past interactions and recognize that my approach was often counterproductive. While I maintain that my intentions were born from love for my son and grandchildren, I acknowledge that my methods caused harm rather than fostering the connection I sought. I cannot change the past, but I am committed to a more respectful relationship moving forward. Eleanor Blackwood. I read the message twice, noting what she didn't say as much as what she did. No explicit apology, no admission of wrongdoing, but an acknowledgement of harm caused and a commitment to change. From Eleanor Blackwood, this represented significant growth. After consulting with Dr. Chen and the children, I agreed to Eleanor's proposal. The next visit centered around boxes of Nathan's childhood treasures, artwork from elementary school, science fair ribbons, clumsy poems written for Mother's Day, photographs of a grinning boy who bore striking resemblance to Max. Watching Eleanor share these glimpses of Nathan's early years, before the weight of the Blackwood legacy had fully descended on his shoulders, I saw a different woman emerging from behind the rigid facade. A woman who, perhaps for the first time, was allowing herself to grieve not just the son she had lost to war, but the relationship they might have had if control hadn't mattered more than connection. As summer approached, Dr. Chen suggested a gradual transition to unsupervised visits, short outings to public places initially, with clear time boundaries and check-in protocols. I agreed with cautious optimism, and the children, seeing Eleanor's consistent efforts to respect their autonomy, were willing to try. The first such visit was a Saturday afternoon trip to the Botanical Gardens, neutral territory with plenty of space and activity. When I picked them up afterward, I braced for complaints or tension, but instead found them animated, describing an encounter with a gardener who had shown them how to propagate succulents. Eleanor had purchased small plants for each of them, accepting without comment when Olivia selected one with vibrant pink edges instead of the more conservative varieties Eleanor would have traditionally preferred. "She's trying, Mom," Olivia said that evening as we prepared dinner. "Really trying. It's weird, but kinda nice too. I'm glad," I said, meaning it sincerely. Everyone deserves the chance to grow and change. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her? For everything?" Olivia asked, her perceptiveness cutting straight to the question I had been asking myself. I considered this carefully. Forgiveness is complicated. I don't think it means forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. For me, it's more about not letting that hurt control my actions moving forward. I chopped vegetables thoughtfully. I'm working on it, just like she is. Olivia nodded, wisdom beyond her years in her eyes. That's fair. We're all works in progress, right? Exactly right. 1 year to the day after Eleanor confronted us at the community pool, I received a package by courier. Inside was a leather-bound album, expensively crafted but tasteful. The note attached read simply, "For all of us to remember Nathan as he truly was, not merely as we needed him to be." Eleanor, sigh. Album contained photographs I had never seen before. Nathan as a toddler, as a gangly teenager, as a new cadet. But interspersed with these familiar milestones were unexpected moments. Nathan laughing unreservedly at what appeared to be a family picnic. Nathan focused intently on a model ship he was building. Nathan asleep on a couch with an open book on his chest. The final page held a formal portrait of Nathan in his dress uniform, the image I had seen displayed prominently in Eleanor's home for years. But beside it, she had placed a candid shot I recognized from our family beach vacation 5 years earlier. Nathan building a sandcastle with the children, his hair tousled by the wind, his smile unguarded and genuine. Below these contrasting images, Eleanor had written a single line. Both were real. I am learning to honor all of him. I closed the album, tears blurring my vision. This was not a complete resolution, not a fairy tale ending where all hurts were healed and all conflicts resolved. Eleanor remained Eleanor, proud, sometimes rigid, forever shaped by the military culture that had defined her existence. I remained cautious, protective of the boundaries that kept my children safe and our family whole. But something fundamental had shifted. The woman who had once called my daughters heartless for maintaining their boundaries now recognized the courage it took to speak their truth. The woman who had tried to control every aspect of her son's life was beginning, however tentatively, to acknowledge the damage that control had wrought. And I, who had once responded to her cruelty with calculated exposure of her secrets, was learning that victory didn't have to mean destruction. That sometimes, the most powerful response to someone who wants to rewrite your story is simply to live it authentically, day by day, in full view of those who once tried to define you. Our truth had prevailed, not because we had destroyed Eleanor's carefully constructed narrative, but because we had refused to let it define us. And in that refusal, in that quiet insistence on our right to heal in our own way, we had ultimately offered Eleanor her own path to redemption, if she was brave enough to take it. The following summer brought change to our family landscape once more. Olivia received her acceptance to the University of Washington's Environmental Science program, a path entirely her own, neither following her father's military career nor rebelling against it. The day her letter arrived, I texted Eleanor with the news, a courtesy that had become part of our new normal. Her response surprised me. May I take her to lunch to celebrate, just the two of us? I consulted Olivia, who considered briefly before nodding. Yeah, I think that would be okay. They met at an upscale cafe downtown. I didn't ask for details afterward, respecting their growing relationship, but Olivia volunteered that Eleanor had given her a gift, not the pearls or family heirlooms I might have expected, but a professional-grade camera for documenting environmental fieldwork. She said Grandpa Richard loved photography, Olivia told me, examining the camera with genuine appreciation. Not many people knew that about him because it wasn't part of his military image. She thought I might use that same passion differently. It was a small moment, but significant. Eleanor acknowledging that legacy could flow through channels she hadn't designed or controlled. Max, now 14, and navigating the turbulent waters of adolescence, developed an unexpected interest in architecture. Eleanor, surprisingly, encouraged this, sharing that Nathan had sketched building designs in high school before military expectations redirected his path. She hired a tutor to help Max develop his drafting skills, carefully consulting me first, respecting the boundaries we'd established. As for me, I began dating again, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. James introduced me to his colleague Michael, a thoughtful environmental lawyer whose patience and transparency were balms to my war-wounded heart. Eleanor met him at Olivia's graduation party, sizing him up with her characteristic thoroughness, before offering a measured nod of approval. "He sees you," she commented simply. Nathan didn't always manage that. It was perhaps the most honest acknowledgement she'd ever made of her son's failings, not as a soldier, but as a husband. On the anniversary of Nathan's death, 3 years after our custody battle, we gathered at the military cemetery, myself, the children, Eleanor, and a few close friends. The formal ceremony had concluded, most attendees dispersed, when Eleanor approached the headstone alone. I watched from a distance as she placed a single rose, then something else, small, that I couldn't identify. Later, curiosity drew me back to the grave. There, beside Eleanor's rose, sat a small toy airplane, the kind a child might play with. A personal token so unlike the formal tributes she'd always insisted upon. That evening, my phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. "Thank you for allowing me to know my son through his children's eyes. It's a gift I don't deserve but treasure." Nonetheless, I stood on our back porch, watching Olivia and Max laughing with Michael as they attempted to light our temperamental fire pit. The oak tree Nathan and I had planted cast long shadows across the yard, sturdy and thriving despite the storms it had weathered. Eleanor would never be the grandmother I would have chosen for my children. The wounds she had inflicted would always leave scars. But in revealing her darkest secret, the manipulation of her own son, we had unintentionally offered her the chance to confront the true cost of control. And in that confrontation, she had found a different path forward. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy, but transforming the battlefield entirely. Creating space where new stories can grow from the ashes of old deceptions. Where truth, however painful, becomes the foundation for something unexpected. Perhaps even something like healing,